بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد إخوة الإسلام عباد الله, I'd like to welcome the listening audience to yet another episode of Heavyweight Dialogue. And as usual, I'm joined by my regular participants, our brother Abu Abdussalam Sadiq Al-Juyani and our brother Abu Abdullah Ismail. May Allah Ta'ala preserve both of the brothers. And as usual, for those that want to enter the discussion, and then when I get the opportunity, I'll leave the link in the live chat area for those that want to join the discussion by Allah's permission. That's first. And second, we encourage the brothers and sisters to subscribe to the channel, to press the like button on the video, and thus for so on, so we could try and take advantage of YouTube's algorithm as it relates to spreading the message in which we present to the people. And so that leads me into the topic of discussion tonight. And the topic of discussion is going to be dealing with practical suggestions that could be made to Masaajid. Practical suggestions that could be made to the Masaajid as it relates to providing services for certain needs within the community. And of course, what we're dealing with tonight will be in accordance with that which the Masajid should have the ability to do. We're not talking about anything that's extravagant, that's going to need 100 people to pull off, that's going to need hundreds of thousands of dollars to pull off. But we're talking about things that are taking place in the community that the masjid or the masajid can help to alleviate, because it's not on a very large scale. These are things that may be, considered to be from that which is grassroots. And so this is what we want to discuss tonight, especially as we consider the fact that when we like to dialogue about or converse about being more solution oriented as it relates to the problems that are occurring in the communities. And this is from the statement of Allah Ta'ala, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. So aid and or assist one another in righteousness and fear of Allah, and do not aid and or assist one another in sin and transgression. In sin and transgression. So with that being said, then we know the condition of a lot of the masajid here, and we know the needs of the people that are within the community. So we want to begin with detailing what some things that could be done. And alhamdulillah, I believe my guest participants are very qualified to talk about this issue, because we know our brother, for instance, Abu Abdullah Ismail was Imam of a masjid in New York, Masjid Ahl al-Quran wal Hadith, correct?
Ahl al-Quran wa Sunnah.
Ahl al-Quran wa Sunnah for like 11 years. Likewise, Sadiq was the Imam of Masjid al-Bukhari, helped establish that, and helped establish other masajid. And so the brothers are more than capable and qualified to discuss these particular affairs. So, with that said, then I'll turn the mic over to our brother Sadiq first, inshallah, as it relates to, the conditions of the masajid and some of the more prevalent things that can be done to assist some of these issues that may be within the communities. نعم تفضل يا أخي بارك الله فيكم.
وفيكم بارك الله جزاكم الله خير. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين. ثم أما بعد. الحمد لله على نعمة الإسلام والسنة. All praise and thanks belong to Allah for guiding us to Islam and for guiding us to the Sunnah. Bila shak wa bila raib, as we know, when it comes to the programs of the Masajid, the programs have to be of tremendous value and quality. And this is with the prioritization of that which is important, followed by that which follows it in importance. As ilm, as knowledge, is the objective and one of the main objectives of the Masajid as far as spreading the knowledge and teaching the knowledge and educating the people of those things that are most important. As the poet mentioned, العلم إن طلبته طويل وعمرك لتحصيله قصير فقدم منه بالأهام فالأهام. That knowledge, if you're going to seek it, then it is long, its path is long, and the lifespan in which you have been given in order to get it, it is short. So start with that which is most important and then follow it with that which is important. So bila shak bila raib, tawheed is the most important aqidah, the most important thing. So it is incumbent that the Masajid, and I'm bringing this up to say that when it comes to teaching and educating these things, one, the Masajid have to develop programs that are very extensive and that are very detailed, and programs that are very structured, right? So when it comes to the teaching of these particular things, then it should be a methodology by way in which they are taught. Now, the students of knowledge, those who have went overseas and studied, you find that typically they will teach the way in which they were taught, right? And this is from the benefits of choosing to sit with the people of knowledge and being very selective in who you sit with. So this is something that has to be established. Now, when it comes to these things, we find in a lot of the Masajid that there is an emphasis on the adults. And we're not saying that that there should be no emphasis on the adults. These classes need to be established, no doubt about that. Bila shak wa bila raib. They have to be established. But also, in addition to that, we have to make sure that attention is given to the sisters. So we have to have structured sister classes where these things are also being taught. In other words, when we look at a sisters class, it shouldn't be just we're going to speak about those affairs that are particular to the women. Yes, that has to be spoken about as well. But we should make sure that the women, they are learning correctly their aqidah, their minhaj, classes where it gives an opportunity not just to go over the explanation, because that has to be a staple. We go over the explanations, but also other circles where the text of the books are being memorized, or the proofs and the evidences from the chapters as it relates to these particular topics are being memorized and studied, and so on and so forth. This is very important. It's something that I see being lacking in many masajid. And in additionally to that, which brings me to kind of the main point that I wanted to make, is that we have to make sure that we have the similar classes that are very well structured, that take into consideration the level of a person, classes that start with that which is most important, followed by that which is importance, classes that there is a structure where the students and the pupils will gradually take on subject matters that are more difficult and more difficult and so on and so forth, right? For the children, these classes have to be serious. And a lot of the efforts that are taking place inside of the masajid in the communities, as far as the weekend programs, in most places is not adequate, and our children are not being educated properly, right? Where they're not accomplishing anything educational wise. So they're not coming out memorizing Arba'in an-Nawawiyya. They're not coming out memorizing Thalathatul Usul, so on and so forth. And this is a problem. And even when it comes to those programs that focus and center on the Quran, in many places, these classes, likewise, they're not that great either, right? So focus on a strong Quran program, but not just from the standpoint of memorizing it, but also going over what the children are memorizing in a manner that is on their level. These things have to be established. And if there is a standard that we are looking to establish throughout the various masajid, then this is key. They have to memorize the Quran, but also go over what they're memorizing in a very simplistic, rudimentary way that is on their level and in a manner that they can understand and grasp, right? And additionally, teaching them their aqidah in a manner that is up on their level, in a manner that they can grasp. And as they go on and as they get older, then they're given more and more and more that is going to be age appropriate, level appropriate, so on and so forth. But the likes of these things, which are a given, have to be there. But I would say in a more structured manner. And then after that, those things that the Muslims are dealing with has to be stressed and it has to be taught, and emphasis needs to be placed upon it from the ahkam of tahara, from how to make wudu, how to make ghusl, how to pray, so on and so forth. These things have to be spoken about in a very detailed and in a very systematic a way, in a very organized approach. This is what we should have, and this is the way I feel it should be. And in addition and more than that, but this requires from the administrations of the masajid that they have to step things up. They have to do they have to do their part, right? They have to do their part, and they have to make sure that individuals who are qualified to teach are made available to come in and to teach. So they have to gather their resources to make sure that these things take place. And this is, I believe, a lot of the disconnections that we see inside of our communities and why we don't see these things happening. Because anytime you have a student of knowledge and they have to work 40 plus hours a week, so on and so forth, you're not going to be able to get out of that individual the likes of what I mentioned. Why? Because human beings are limited in their ability. They're limited in their energy, right? Both physically and mentally. So if a person is working 40 hours a week, you're not going to get a quality class from them. A person is away from the masjid 40 plus hours a week. You're not even going to see them for those 40 plus hours a week that they're off doing something else. So the communities, the administrations, and not just the administrations, but the people of the community, right, have to get themselves in gear, and they have to start working towards making sure these things are put in place. And inshallah ta'ala, that's kind of all I want to mention on that point for right now as kind of an introduction. But I really want to put the screws, Yani, to the people of the communities, right? Because enough is enough. We hear the complaints, we hear the tirades, we hear the people get online from the bedroom of whoever's house, or walking down the street, or in a car, walking riding somewhere, sitting somewhere, whatever, and they ranting and raving about what they don't see inside of the communities, where they themselves are a part of the problem and are not a part of the solution. And that has to stop. So it is upon people to own their portion and part as relates to these things, and to become more part of the solution and not of the problem. Wallahu a'lam wa a'lam. No, but inshallah, again, I want to come back to that point, and there's a lot more I want to say about that.
Yeah, well, definitely the portion where you said about the brothers involved in dawah being taken away from that responsibility due to working 9 to 5s. We definitely need to sit down and unpack that discussion in a much more larger scale. Because even when we do things independently of the Masajid, things like heavyweight dialogue and that's forth for so on. I know some of us, from working and like this, by the time we come around and do this, we're very tired, you know. And so that
Oh,
is
and indeed. And I believe we all work today. I worked a half a day.
a discussion in and of itself, you know.
No.
But now, so at any rate, I think when it comes to the Masajid, the administrators of the Masajid have to be as organized as possible to be able to pull off small programs and meet the community's needs. So it's very important that the Masajid, one, most likely, I don't think you find too many Masajid that are 508c1As. I don't think you find too much of that. The majority of the time, you find the Masajid being 501c3s, nonprofit entities. And the way that the states set up the nonprofits, they have a certain way that they should be organized and run. And this is, for efficiency reasons and due to the nonprofit not being anybody's personal property or personal business. At any rate, it's very important that the masajid that are established are organized in what they're doing, organized from the perspective of the entity that they formed and how they're running it, so in order for them to be more efficient. So a lot of times, you have a board. We know the role of the board of a nonprofit organization is simply to set the agenda and the general direction of the nonprofit. Yani, in other words, the goals of the nonprofit, and it sets up the rules, the bylaws, and everything else. As it relates to the basis of the functionality of the organization. But then, usually, there is an executive committee. Now, sometimes when you have a new nonprofit, the executive committee and the board usually are the same people. Executive committee being the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and things of this nature. When it comes to the board of the masjid, you don't necessarily, these individuals, if you have a board, then plus you have an executive committee, if you have two separate entities like that, then the executive committee are going to have to be people that have talent. They're going to have to be people that have talent that can fulfill the duties. The role of secretary, the role of president, the role of vice president, the role of treasurer, the role of media director, the role of security, the role of whatever. They're going to have talent to be able to carry out these duties in order for the entity to be more of benefit for the community that it's serving. And so these are things that the administration has to consider in order to move the community forward. Because a lot of times we see people form masajid or maybe 10, 20, or 30 years ago, masajid were formed. And at some point, they come to a stalemate. They come to a halt. They take the nonprofit to as far as it can go.
Yeah.
Based off their know-how, for lack of better expressions. They've taken it as far as it can go. And so as a result of that, you now have maybe 10 years of the entity remaining exactly on the same level it was 10 years prior to now, or 20 years prior to now, and thus forth and so on. So if things are going to be set up in the Masaajid, if programs and services are going to be set up in the Masaajid, then I think at the starting point with these Masaajid is first, they have to make sure that they are the people who are governing, that these are, that it's a functioning governing body as it relates to the board and the executive committee in order to plan in the best interest of the community, because the community should be looking for, one, ways of making money, not just fundraising every Friday or whatever, or sadaqah box or whatever the case may be, but establishing programs that could possibly get grant money, establishing for-profit businesses where the business itself funds the entity, and thus for so on. So now you're going to have to bring the talent within the community, get the talent involved, the businessmen, those that are successful in that regard, and in order to strategize these things. Why? Because financial stability is going to make it much, much more easier to pull off ideas,
Right,
and to accomplish ideas. Because all of us can come up with some good ideas, but if we have $0 behind it, that's all they'll be, just a good idea. And Allah knows best. But anyway, I think I kind of sent the conversation a little off topic, and Allah knows, I mean, it was related, but it wasn't, exactly what we're discussing. But I'll pass the microphone to our brother Ismail, just to get his input on the issue, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man tamassaka bi sunnatihi ila yawm ad-din wa ba'd. Jazakumullahu khairah. What you brothers, both of you said was right on. You nailed it. From both aspects, from the administrative aspect and the academic or educational aspect. Those are pretty much the two of the main pillars and foundations of the masjid. Okay. Of course, when we look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, rather we look at what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, the first masjid that he established it upon taqwa. It was established upon taqwa. And we know taqwa is something that is cultivated, it's attained and cultivated and sustained with knowledge. Okay, with knowledge and with purification of the soul and so on and so forth. And nowadays, in spite of the fact that many people don't want to acknowledge it, in order to maintain consistent educational efforts, in order to, keep the Muslim community away from the ills of society and the things that are corrupting the youth and the adults, from the men and the women. We have to have enough finance to do that. That's something that costs money, to buy up land, for example, and buy property, and kind of build our own environment, like we discussed previously on our, within our other discussions, our most recent discussions, establishing Muslim villages, right, and environments for the Muslims to dwell in, so that we can collectively, right, attain this goal, which is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we all are trying to seek, and ask that Allah make that easy for us. So we need to have the finances, and the academics, the sincerity, all of these things. We're not in a position to go without any of these things. And the less we have, right, of any of these categories, the more deficient we are in any of these categories, the more we're going to feel it. So when we look at the du'at and the imams and the people who are typically responsible for the educational aspect of the masjid. There's one or two things have to happen. And I think that the latter is probably more probable than the former. The first thing is that the people who are heading the masjid, in many cases nowadays, they're not made up of people that have a lot of Islamic education. Sometimes they're made up of one or two people that have a nice, pretty decent understanding of money and how to make money, but they may not know, as we discussed in the past, the in and outs of a 501c3. For someone to really go in and maximize the benefit that comes along with the 501c3, like for example, someone like Apple Corporate, somebody who actually understands finance, understands what a nonprofit is comprised of and what opportunities are available for a nonprofit and how to maximize the benefit. That person will be probably the most prodigal or most significant or most qualified person, I should say, to choose to be in that position. And if that person has a team of people around him that can support him and complement his efforts and his knowledge about that thing, then without a doubt, we'll maximize the 501c3, okay, and get all the benefits out of it. So, again, the Masaajid, a lot of times the administrations are made up of people who, in my experience, who know a little bit about money, know something about business. Inshallah, they're people of good character, but they don't know a whole lot about Islam or how a masjid needs to be built. And they don't really have, in my opinion, I'm not going to say their priorities are not in the right place, but due to lack of Islamic knowledge and lack of, what the Muslims need in order to be great, they don't know how to prioritize. And I don't want to turn this into a imam versus administration discussion, but it's kind of impossible to not talk. It's like you can't really avoid talking about this if we're going to really touch on everything we need to touch on, because there's such a disconnect and a misunderstanding as it relates to the role that the imam plays and the administrative body plays. The things that will make a masjid great, the imam is typically the most knowledgeable person in the building regarding those things. And the imam is not, in a lot of cases, I don't want to say respected, but he's not expected. He's not expected to be the one who's in charge of that movement. He's expected to play a role because in a lot of times the administrative personnel believe that they're going to set the agenda and set the direction for the masjid, and then the imam is going to come and he's going to play his part in helping them attain or fulfill that agenda. But the agenda itself from inception has to be accurate. It has to be correct, right? It has to be healthy, because if not, then even if we attain that agenda, we're still not going to make a lot of progress, the kind of progress that we need to make the community great. So in my opinion, I think the best thing we can do as people who are du'at and people who are more on the educational and academic side of the masjid and the spiritual cultivating side of the masjid, in my opinion, in an ideal situation would be if we ourselves became so financially independent that we were, and not just financially independent to the point where we didn't rely or depend on the administrations or the administrative personnel or the community and the people they may have voices in the community to pay salaries and so on and so forth, but that we have enough finance that we ourselves can finance our own projects. Okay, because I say this publicly, and this is not, I don't think this is every case. Okay, our community here in the Popka, I have a lot of confidence in the brothers, and I think that so far from what I've seen, they're doing a terrific job. And there are other administrations that I've seen or witnessed or heard about. I'm going to exclude them from what I'm saying, but in a lot of cases, a lot of these administrations, due to their lack of understanding, unintentionally, inshallah, they're holding back progress. And so if we as people who are more academically driven, and we tend to, try to make our decisions based off of the Quran and Sunnah from an academic and educational standpoint, I think we will probably, and Allah knows best with Allah's tawfiq, it would be expected, and I don't want, this is kind of like a weird conceited thing to say, but it's like I don't even know any other kind of way to say it. Us collectively, I think that we will probably do, we will be expected to do, I don't want to say better, because we're trying to be as kind and polite as possible. But I think it will be expected that the people who are busy themselves with seeking Islamic knowledge and at the same time gaining experience in leadership, in dawah, in the development of communities, I think that it's expected that we, need to be people who can put together a community and make sure that it has the tools that it needs a little bit more efficiently than people who are not busying themselves with, learning or making sure that every move they make is based off of knowledge. Even when it comes to a person's affiliation and connection with the scholars, a lot of times administrations don't prioritize that. And we need scholastic leadership in building communities. So if we ourselves as du'at were able, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, to make enough money where we became financially independent, even of the communities to a certain extent, and we can put our own financial plans together and we can put the masjid in a place. And again, if we're not qualified, we don't know a lot about money, then we bring in the people who know about money, right? We bring in the people who know about a 501c3. We bring in the people who know how to, invest money, and we make sure that everything gets done, in a way that's permissible and pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah. And we go ahead and we're involved from inception. So whatever financial projects or whatever things in the masjid that needs to be, funded, we're going to make sure that we fund them. We ourselves, and we put together a team of brothers. It's a lot of times it's the other way around, where you have a group of brothers that want good, but they don't have knowledge and they don't really understand what they're doing. And then they go out and they bring the imam and bring in du'at, and it's a lot of times it's chaotic. It's good that comes out of it, but if you look at the communities, we don't really have a Muslim community. Okay, like for the most part, we discussed this already. There are some places that have some good going on, some places where Muslims have flocked to and bought up property, and they have a masjid and they have some things going on. A lot of times it may be something that is more germane or more specific to a particular a demographic of people, and it's not as open and as multicultural in terms of meeting the needs of the people as it needs to be. Being a masjid in the community here in the West, it may lack that, and it lacks some very vital things. So even if we look at what some other brothers have done as a blueprint and say, okay, well, that was good, but we see what the mistakes are. So let's go do similar to what they did and try to make sure that we patch up the holes that they missed. And then maybe our children or another group of brothers may come along and see what we did and maybe look at some mistakes that we made, and then they'll go and we'll continue to develop until eventually we have something holistic and something great. But honestly, I think that in the ideal situation would be for us as brothers to come together and work as hard as we can to try to put together our own independent funding for independent masajid and community and dawah centers and so on and so forth, and dawah efforts, that we don't have to rely so much on the people. And even if we do, we bring them in as our supporters. We bring them as our constituency, as opposed to us, being brought in by people who have an agenda already. And now we're stuck in a situation where, alhamdulillah, it's not a bad agenda. It's not a bad team to be on, but we already know how these things go. When somebody brings people, I've never seen a person say, look, or a group of people say, listen, we've invested $500,000 in this place, $1 million in this place. We've been here for 10 years and so on and so forth. But guess what? We want you to come here, and you three brothers to come here, and you're just going to take over and lead us to where we need. No, they're going to come, expect you to play a role. And if it doesn't look like you're helping them fulfill the agenda that they want, it has nothing to do with you doing what's right or wrong. It has nothing to do with you being in contradiction to the Quran and Sunnah or not. We have an agenda, inshallah, maybe a good one, but you're not trying to fit it. Our agenda is to have 1 class a week, 2 classes a week, basic classes. We don't want a bunch of Arabic. We don't want things to go to the next level. I know communities like this. If you're going in overcharged and you're teaching too much and you're doing too many, they'll say, listen, we don't really want, that's a lot right there. The people are not ready for that. We just want this and a little bit of that, and that's all we need. And then you get to that point, it's like, okay, well, the people are still struggling. Okay, this is my community. My community needs more. I want to do more. And if you're part of a team of people who don't understand what we need to implement in order to establish greatness for our community, then you're going to be stagnated, and you won't have the political strength. You won't have the financial strength. You won't have anything, and you're not going to split the community like many fools do and go out and get mad and go around the corner and start their own masjid. We're not going to do that. So you're just going to be stuck in a position until you wind up going somewhere else, doing something else. And lastly, I think that just on a more basic level, aside from the Masajid having to have a level of financial independence where, you know, they are making it, the Masajid are making their own money, whether it's because the board or the community members, some money people in the community come up with ways to offset the masjid expenses, whether it's with a laundromat or one or two small businesses that can offset all the expenses, and we can rely on the people maybe for certain bigger projects, but the everyday, week to week, day to day, month to month expenses should be on autopilot in America, and Allah knows best. That's my opinion based off me being, you know, behind the scenes a little bit. But my last point, just to add on to what Sadiq said about education and making sure that the children get educated, on a much smaller goal, is that I believe that all the masajid, every masjid, should prioritize learning Arabic more than they prioritize anything else in the building. Memorizing the Quran and learning the Arabic language. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Kunu rabbaniyin bima kuntum tu'allimun al-kitab wa bima kuntum tadrusun." Right? Be rabbaniyin in your, as it relates to what should be kunu rabbaniyin bima kuntum tu'allimun. Be rabbaniyin when, as it relates to what you teach people, and be rabbaniyin and as it relates to what you yourself study. Ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wa an abihi, he said, "Ar-Rabbani alladhi yurabbi an-nas bi sighar al-ilm qabla kibarih." That the Rabbani is the one who teaches people the more, you know, rudimentary and elementary aspects of knowledge before they get to the bigger aspects of knowledge. And we all know that the foundation of ilm is the memorization of the book of Allah and the Arabic language. So we should put more prioritization on that than we do anything else. We have 5, 6, 7, 8 classes. One week we're doing Sharh Sunnah, another day, or Monday we're doing Sharh Sunnah, Tuesday we're doing, you know, Lu'mat al-I'tiqad, and Wednesday we're doing Mulakhas al-Fiqh. And by the time you finish, you know, you have a bunch of people in the class that stand up for Salat, Isha. Nobody can benefit, or their hearts are not getting affected like they need to by the recitation of the book of Allah. So I think that we need to go, the Masajid need to be going full-fledged with teaching Arabic every day, classes in the morning, classes in the evening. That's where the money needs to be going. Bringing in teachers. If the Imam is freed up like he needs to be freed up, and he's taken care of in an excellent way, making really good money so that he doesn't have to go worry about starting businesses and investing and doing all of that. He has enough money to save and take care of his family, and they're not wanting for anything. He can dedicate that time. And if the Imam's not qualified, or he doesn't feel comfortable teaching Arabic, or he doesn't, you know, that's not what he's too caught up with marriage counseling and all the other stuff that may be going on, depending on the needs of the community, then the Imam can appoint someone to do it and to assist him. But full-time Arabic classes need to be taught, catered to the schedules of the men and women and children of that community, where they're around the clock, 7 days a week, where everybody's catered to. And the Quran needs to be taught 7 days a week in the way that everybody's catered to. As far as academics are concerned, in my opinion, I remember one time we were in New York, and I posed to the brother, I said, what we need to do, I said, I want to do one Islamic studies class a week, and I'm just going to do Arabic like 4 or 5 days a week. I was doing it in the morning, alhamdulillah, after Fajr. But I wanted to do it in the evening. We were doing 5 or 6 Arabic classes a week and cater to everybody. Now we have online classes. That should be the #1 goal. Memorization of the book of Allah and learning the Arabic language. With bila shak. If we were to do that in a year or two, I can guarantee you, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, wa bitawfiqillah, our community will be more developed than any community here in the United States. And Allah knows best. Now, so that's all I had to
I want to kind of touch on some of the things that was being said and move it back to the discussion at hand, because one, all of those things that you mentioned, especially as it relates to economics and like that, all of that is very, very important for the masajid and administrators and things of that nature. But I think that when we're dealing with this particular topic, I want to take a look at like the current situation, the current condition of the masajid, and what those masajid can actually do right now to better their situations. Now, both you and Sadiq mentioned education, and that both, without a doubt, that's important. And I think that one when we're looking at educating, we're looking at educating from the standpoint of the children and the adults in the community as it relates to the basis of usuluddin, of the Quran, and thus forth and so on. But when we look into our communities, especially communities that are in lower income areas, you may have situations where families are starving or they're having a hard time getting by, living paycheck to paycheck, or they're working, but the money runs out by the end of the month, and they have to figure out what to do the 5 or 10 days before the end of the month, uh, before the new month comes. Sometimes it's just as simple as just looking at what other people have accomplished prior to us. And so, like for example, the Black Panthers back in the 50s and 60s and even 70s, they had the breakfast program. That was something that was well known. And we know that this organization wasn't $1 million organization, and Allah knows best. I don't believe they were $1 million organization. And so sometimes it could be just as simple as reduplicating something that was already existing with another type of organization. When you go into places like Philadelphia, places like New York, places like New Jersey, you have very large concentrations of Muslims, adults and children. And a lot of the Muslims are in lower income areas. So it's almost guaranteed that you have Muslims that may be living paycheck to paycheck. You may have the single mothers. You may have whatever else that you may have. So, for instance, a breakfast program similar to that which the Black Panthers pulled off in the 60s and like this could be beneficial for the communities that especially that are in lower income areas, and it may not cost an exacerbated amount of money to pull something like this off. And it's very possible that the masajid that are existing on the levels that they're on right now, some of these masajid may be able to pull things off like that. Another thing, we look at the society today, and this is a reality, and we need to talk about this on Heavyweight Dialogue as well. But you see that within the culture of the American, and when I was overseas, I used to hear some brothers make very stupid comments saying we as Americans don't have culture, comparing our culture with wherever I may have been at in Yemen or whatever. And they're saying, well, see, they have a culture, we don't have a culture. That statement is incorrect. Everybody has a culture. And even in America, the traditional roles of men and women back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, has been broken down today as a result of varying negative influences from the feminist movement and things of that nature. And so those influences affect the Muslims that are living in this society. And so now you can find a young woman in this society, the average 20-year-old, between 20 and 30, they are considered to have modern values, not traditional values that we found within the women of our culture in the 1960s, 1950s, and like this. And so now, a lot of these women with modern ideas don't make good wives. They don't make good wives. So you had with the NOI back in the 70s and before, they would have what the MGT classes for the young women, teaching them how to be better women, in relationships and like this, as it relates to relationships with their spouses and relationships with their children. And these types of things are not something that may cost a lot of money to pull off, but establishing these type of classes for the younger sisters in order to better improve the marriage rate in our communities. So, that's another example. A third example would be because most masajid usually have kitchens. Again, a part of the modern man and the modern woman in this society is far away from the traditional values that were found in the culture in the 1950s and 60s and like this. So just like the MGT classes, we might have to have like quote unquote manhood classes for the young boys, teaching the boys how to be responsible husbands, and thus forth and so on. But these are programs. These are examples of programs that could possibly be implemented within the community. That communities can, for whatever level, financial level that they're on right now, they could probably establish, and it's very probable that it'll be within their means to establish. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best. And so those are some of the things that I think, that's what we really want to look at. Okay, we know that there are other things that need to be done. We know we need to get money. We know we need to have long-term goals. And we know we need to be very ambitious in those goals as a community. We understand that. But what are some of the things that we could do to help alleviate some of the problems within the community right now, as it relates to the means that we have right now? Because a lot of times I think administrators of Masaajid are just not, are like I said, they get to a point and then they stop. And that's because a lot of times that's all they had to give. But a lot of times smaller programs that are within their means can be arranged and or organized to meet the needs of the people within the community. And it may not necessarily cost a lot of money. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Now, and Allah Ta'ala knows best, but I think that there is a tremendous disconnection at times between the communities and a lot of what you just mentioned, in the sense that in many places these things don't come to mind, right? And I believe that part of the reason that is, and why we have these type of problems, is that the students of knowledge are not setting the agenda. The students of knowledge are not setting the agenda, because when we look at the da'wah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it was a da'wah that was holistic. It just didn't concentrate on one aspect to the neglect of anything else, right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he went to Medina, from the first advice in which he gave to the Muslims was, Ya ayyuhan nas, afshu salam, O human beings, O people, spread the salams, wa at'imu ta'am, and feed people. Naam, wa sallu bil layl wan nasu niyam, and pray at night and the people are sleeping. Tadkhulu jannah bisalam, you will enter into Jannah with peace and tranquility, and it will be said to you salam. Ala kulli hal, if we look at this, right, we see a concentration to establish the rights and the basics of the religion now that can be illustrated in Afshu Salam, spread the salams, right? We see the importance of rectifying oneself and doing those things that are a personal benefit to oneself. And we see that in the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, and pray at night and the people are sleeping. But at the same time, we also see what that social good and concentration on the people's immediate needs, their day-to-day needs, in the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, and feed the people. Feeding the people is something that is tremendously important. But unfortunately, there has been a degree of miseducation where I have heard individuals criticize others because in their minds, they're focusing on social programs when the people still don't fully understand every aspect and affair of Aqidah and Minhaj. Where in my astonishment, my response to the likes of these things is, why do you believe that one has to be done to the detriment of the other? You can accomplish both at the same time. There's no need to not try to feed people and then at the same time just focusing on educating them. You can educate them and feed them at the same time. And I'll give you an example. Some years back in some of the communities that I have been over, and this is taken into account the limited resources, is taken into account that we're not a community of millionaires and so on and so forth. But it was something as simple as encouraging the people that when you go shopping and there may be a sale on a certain item, right? Buy one, get one free, buy one, get one half price. And a lot of times when we go and we take advantage of these sales, we only need one of those items. We don't need multiple amounts of those items. You know what I mean? So the other one goes in the pantry and then we get to it sometime later. So we would say, listen, when you go shopping in a situation like that, you find it's a deal, like you have the times you can get 10 cans of soup for $5 and things of this nature, right? Take advantage of that deal. Even though you don't need it all, take advantage of that deal. Take one can of soup, take one can of corn, take, one of whatever that you got as an extra that you really don't need right now, bring it to the masjid and put it in the general pantry so that anyone who is hungry or suffering from food insecurities, they can come and they can benefit from it. And what does that take? It takes you buying one extra thing, or it takes you taking advantage of a buy one, get one free or get one half off sale, and then taking that thing the other one that you got on sale, and then giving it away, adding it to the pantry so that whoever needs food can come and get food, putting packages together that can be brought to the poor, so on and so forth. This is something that we all can do. So it requires some organization on the behalf of the administrations, but it also requires effort on the behalf of the general community. See, a lot of times the general communities, they use the imams and they use the administrations as a scapegoat. The imam is not doing such and such. The administration is not doing such and such. And they spend their time complaining about what these other individuals are not doing without putting that energy into what they could be doing, as opposed to saying what they're not doing. No, why don't you figure out what you can do and then put energy and effort into doing that? And as mentioned, it doesn't have to be anything that is very, time consuming. It doesn't have to be anything that requires a great deal of money and financial resources. Not at all. Small efforts, if done collectively, then they will amount to great strides and steps. So it is on the members of the community to take some ownership. Those classes that you mentioned, as far as mentorship type of classes, right, where the elders from the community, they help train the young people in the community on basic life skills, right? We know this is something that is needed. I mean, we live in a time where this is a career. You have individuals who have life coaches who help people on everyday life things. They feel they need a life coach. And this is because to a certain degree, this is needed. Now, when you have a breakdown of the communities where the elders, a lot of times, their advice is not sought, We don't have a situation where we're being mentored by those who are older. We don't have a situation where we're getting the advice from those who are older about how to navigate and to do these certain basic things as they come up in life. You know, and it's unfortunate, but we have this disconnect where it becomes the younger ones who, alhamdulillah, Allah Ta'ala has guided many of them to the Sunnah, and perhaps some of the older generations, right? They have not been guided to the Sunnah, right? Some of the older generations, they may still be stuck on some false ideologies and some false notions that they picked up in the past when coming through these various organizations on their way to Islam, right? So it becomes a situation where it becomes, oh, well, those older guys, they off of it. They don't understand, they deviant, so on and so forth. So it's kind of like, it becomes like status quo or a proof of an individual Salafiyya that we treat them in a very hands-off manner, a very disrespectful manner. So therefore, an individual, if you're treating an elder like this, then you're not going to be open or even asking for any type of life advice that they can possibly give you. And that within itself is a problem, and that has to be rectified. But in any event, even in a situation where we have those elders from the community who are upon the Sunnah, we're still not reaching out to them and asking for these type of things. Could you come and speak to the youth about this or about that from these life skills? This requires effort on the behalf of the community, because if an individual thinks that the imam is going to give all of the sermons, they're going to lead the salat, they're going to teach all the classes, they're going to, you know, the children classes, the men classes, the women classes, and so on and so forth. Then at the same time, turn around and be mentor and teach life skills to the youth in the community, then you have unrealistic expectations. This is not going to end well. But where are the people from the community? Where are those elders who have the enthusiasm to come and teach these things, who have the enthusiasm to come and to talk to the youth, who can come and teach the youth certain basic life skills, like how to cook, right? Basic life skills, how to cook, how to prepare this meal, how to prepare this dish, how to put together a resume, so on and so forth. All of these things could take place, and they don't require any money. They don't require any financial resources in that, you know, not a great deal of financial resources. They just require some organization and time. So the mere fact that, one, we have in many places, and this is not every place, but in many places we have a lack, it seems like a lack of enthusiasm on behalf of the community to do these type of things, and or we have a disconnection and a rift between the administrations where the communities don't feel open and welcome to present the likes of these ideas, then all of this is a problem. So the administrations have to organize better, and the community has to take more ownership in the establishment of their community and of benefiting the general community by doing some of the things that were mentioned that really don't cost a lot of money and don't take a lot of time and or effort, you know, for that matter.
You know, something that you said as it relates to the disconnect between the community and administration. I made a suggestion to a masjid, and I'm pivoting off of what you just said. That and what you said about how everybody expects the imam of the masjid to do everything, to teach the Quran classes and the hadith classes and whatever else. And then on top of that, turn and teach the youth life skills. And there being a disconnect between the admin and the general community. I made a suggestion. Now, this suggestion that I made, some people may look at this suggestion and say, oh, no, because I remember I made the suggestion to a brother who is an administrator of a masjid, and he took it the wrong way. And I was having a conversation with him. And I had to go back and forth to justify or legitimize the suggestion, or not even that, really for him to understand the full suggestion of what was being made. But here it is. We know we have, in certain states, if you form a nonprofit, that nonprofits have members. they have members, and usually they have a list or requirements for the members. And one of the requirements is usually paying dues. And so one of the ways that this is twofold here, where the masjid benefits and the people and the attendees benefit. If the masjid sets up like members, maybe a group of 10 people, and these 10 people are literally the go-between. They're like the wasata between the idara of the masjid and between the attendees of the masjid. But in what capacity? To what capacity? To what effect? Usually, when you're in a community, you have a lot of people with a lot of suggestions. We should, if you put a suggestion box in the masjid and the musalla, and you tell the people, this is the suggestion box, put your suggestions in the box in order for, that you think will better improve the masjid. Most likely the administration is going to get a box full of suggestions, right? Most likely, we know, right? So what you do to alleviate these random suggestions is you set up members, and you have your criteria for the members. The person has to be a person that prays in the masjid at least once or twice every day. I mean, each masjid could, set up their own rules for who a member is. But members, maybe 10 people. You say you can also put that they have to pay dues, just like any nonprofit's members would. Let's say, for instance, $1,000 a year, they pay $250 every quarter. That's every 3 months, right? And their job is to be the wasat between the community and the attendees of the community of the masjid and the administration. To what capacity? Well, this members board will have to set up meetings with the general community, where a general community can express their needs, can express their desires to this board, to these members, this members board. But when they're suggesting their ideas, now it becomes the job of these members to fully plan out the execution of that idea, with the assistance of the people within the community who may be making the suggestion, or people within the community that think that it's a good suggestion and they have the know-how to pull it off. So now these members, their job is to not only take the suggestion, but make sure that a foolproof portfolio is put together on how that idea can be executed, what the cost would be, how long it would take, the estimated time that it would take to pull it off, and that's for so on. The pros of the idea, the cons of the idea, and that's for so on. So then when they have their meeting with the actual administration, these 10 members, when they actually have their meeting with the administration, they're coming to the administration with ideas that are already fully thought out. The cost of it, what did it take to pull it off, what's the manpower that's needed to pull it off, all of that is in some type of portfolio presented to the administration. So now basically what these members are doing, they're coming every 3 months, they have an annual meeting with the board, and they say, these are the suggestions that we have for this quarter. Suggestion number 1. And then they present the suggestion, what it is, the pros and cons of it, and what did it take to pull it off. And leave the portfolios with the admin. Suggestion number 2, same thing. Leave it with the admin. Suggestion number 3, same thing. Leave it with the admin. Suggestion number 4, for however many suggestions may be. And that's their meeting with the admin. Then the admin has their internal meeting to approve whatever suggestions were made. Okay, this is doable. We can do this immediately. And then they approve it and send it to the executive committee to execute it. If the board and the executive committee are separate people, then they send it to them to execute it. So this is one way that I thought of, because I think of a lot of, I've pondered over a lot of a lot of scenarios as it relates to the local masajid. But this is one way where the attendees of the masajid's needs can be addressed, and it could be effectively brought to the administration instead of people making suggestions in the suggestion box, and they have very ambitious ideas, but they're giving these suggestions to administrators that may not even know how to pull that off. They may think it's a good idea too. It's a good suggestion, but we don't know how to pull this off. So that's what the members are there for. That's what I mean when I say the go between the attendees and the administration. Then on top of that, you got 10 people, 10 members, and they paying dues, each of them paying $1,000 a year. That means now that the masjid has made $10,000 in a year just based off members' dues. And so that's another way of bringing in some type of revenue. It's not that they're paying to come to the masjid and pray. No, that's not what was being said. And Allah knows best. I don't know what the brother's take on that is, but I'm willing to hear.
No. Just real for my curiosity, when you gave that suggestion to the administration of that masjid, what was their response to it?
Well, well, first off, it wasn't implemented, and it was apprehension because they kept going back to the paying dues thing, and so it was a misunderstanding as it relates to the payment. And I was saying, no, brother, you're not paying. You're not telling these members that they have to pay to come pray. I said, this has nothing to do with that. The masjid is open to them like it's open to anybody else. I said, these are members' dues. And I was trying to explain that, nonprofits in a lot of states, you have to have members. And it's normal that the members pay dues. And so you're just implementing that, but you're giving them a role where they're of benefit to the community, because the members can switch out every year. If they're paying $1,000 every year, they could switch out. It could be 10 people this year, and then a whole nother set of 10 people the next year. The administration will have to figure out the rules of how to go about doing that. Maybe they could say you can only be a member 2 or 3 years consecutively before you have to take a year off or something, and it has to be new members. They could come with an idea like that, or something to this effect. That's something that the administration and the organization will have to work out internally. But the point that I was trying to make was, where the apprehension kept coming in at, is people got stuck on them having to pay money. And it's not they're paying money to practice Islam. That's not what that's for. And that goes to show that they don't even have they didn't have a basic understanding of a nonprofit organization that they're running. That's what that went to show, And Allah knows best.
Well, I understand. It's and one of the things I think is one of the things that we can do right now that will help our situations and the establishment of communities and I stress communities. And for those perhaps who weren't here in last episode, let me stress that we mean by community, not a neighborhood, not a neighborhood being a collective place where the people live I mean a community where we control the economics or a great percentage of the economics in that neighborhood, in addition to living in that neighborhood, so on and so forth. Um, I believe that what will help us in the establishment of real, vital, and beneficial communities will be to get rid of the naysayer mentality. There's too much negative energy. Whenever something is brought up, you hear a million excuses on why we cannot do it. And, I'm from the type of background and the type of person that I don't have a lot of tolerance for a great deal of excuses, because if something needs to be done, it needs to be done. If this is something that we need that will benefit us and our children, then we really don't have time to put energy into speaking about why we can't do it. But rather, we should put our energy into looking to how we could do it. Because anything, as they say, most things or anything that is worth anything, you have to work towards it. It's going to take a lot of hard work. And for example, if I'm going to run a marathon, you can come up with a million reasons why I shouldn't run a marathon, right? I'm not in shape. I don't train. Maybe I'm a little too overweight, whatever the case is, right? You could put in a lot of, reasons why maybe I'm not going to win the marathon. I got all that. You understand? There's so much to conquer. So I don't need to hear all that. Why don't you tell me some things, that will encourage me into doing it? You know what I mean? Give me some reasons why perhaps that would be a good idea, and some practical steps that I can take so I can get into running shape and so on and so forth. And I believe in a lot of our communities, this is what we have, because you'd be surprised how many times I will suggest things. And again, let me stress, as our brother Ismail, he mentioned, this is not a reflection as to where I'm at now. This is not a reflection, or not, I'm not speaking to the current situation and or any interaction with the current administration here in Apopka, Florida. No. But I mean, in the past, in other masajid that I have been a part of, in community meetings, speaking with the administration or speaking with members of the administration and giving advice, when you bring suggestions, a lot of times it wasn't, okay, well, let's see how we can make this happen. It became, well, we can't do that because of this, or we don't have the money, or we don't have or we don't. And it came to the point where it's like, all right, if we don't get the money, then figure out how we can get the money. Don't tell me you can't afford it. Tell me how you are going to be able to afford it. Those things that you're going to do so that we could afford it. Why don't you put your energy in that? So that's just some practical advice that I have. Get rid of the naysayer mentality, and instead of telling me what you can't do, look and investigate what you can do, what you have the ability to do, how you can better utilize and allocate the resources at hand. Put energy into doing that, and stop telling me what you can't do. I think if we start doing this, then this I believe would help us get, will help us increase bithnillahi ta'ala. And as far as what you mentioned, dues and things of that nature, yeah, why not? If it's something that could help, if it is something that the people, they could afford, and things of that nature, and was put forward to these things, then why not do that? Why not put together a certain amount of money towards spreading the deen? I mean, I've been a part of a lot of different community meetings, and I'm saying that as a preference to say that I am not in any which way, shape, or form saying that I am not a part of the problem. I am a part of the problem and have been a part of the problem, because we're all in this together. When we fail, we fail. That's the reality. When we fail, we fail. Okay, so let's just put that out the way. But I have been in a lot of community meetings, and one thing I never heard, and you brothers could share with me. Perhaps maybe you heard this before, but I've never heard on any level, be it from the administrators or be it from the general masses of the community, general members of the community. Now, I have heard it from some students of knowledge and some imams, but I mean, put forth in the setting of a community setting, community meeting, I've never heard somebody put on the agenda and say, listen, how can we better spread Allah's religion in this area? How can we better positively affect this area and then put forth a plan, Yani, to accomplish that? I've never heard that mentioned and or suggested in any community meeting that I've ever been in my life that I could recall, and Allah knows best. What about you, brothers? You brothers ever hear anybody hint to anything like that?
No, no. But I see. I want to. I'm gonna let you finish making your point, but I see Omar Council says I have a better idea other than members' dues. Uh, First and foremost, if you have your ideas, I just put the link to the chat, the link to the discussion in the chat area. Come on in and give us your suggestion. This is what we're here for. But I'm hoping that once again, just like the members of that admin got stuck on the dues thing and totally overlooked the the role of the members. I detailed their role, what they would be accomplishing, for the organization. So I hope that isn't being overlooked. We have a guest in Khalil. Looks like his audio finally finished syncing.
Alhamdulillah. And,
What,
and
what,
and and before he starts, I want to say that suggestion, I love that energy because it's just that it's a suggestion to bring forth. It's putting forth ideas of things that could potentially be done to move forward, and that's what we really need. We need brothers to bring forth the suggestions because as our brother Omar is saying, oh, I got a better suggestion, and that's why we have these conversations. Somebody bring up an idea, maybe somebody can add on to that idea, or someone may have a better idea because it's about what's going to be most efficient in accomplishing the goals of establishing real communities and spreading Allah's religion and benefiting the general masses of the society and showing them the benefit that Muslims have to offer. No.
تفضل يا خليل.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وبركاته.
يا مرحبا.
Alhamdulillah. Again, another good talk, a lot of good points. Took some good notes from you brothers. May Allah preserve you and continue down this path of generating a new thought process for us as Muslims and the move past, like what I tell Ismail, these Salafi wars that be exist in these little Salafi beefs that be going on, and moving the thought process into productive and progressive dialogue, which will hopefully be a trigger for implementing an action towards the direction of some of these things. But let me say this, in terms of the services for the Masajid, coming up in a Christian society where we are, in this society, whether or not we want to acknowledge it or not, we are directly and indirectly affected by the atmosphere, the culture, all of these different things that exist. And one thing that happens in this society, this is a society where religion and state is separated. And so some Muslims at time, we don't realize we're taking on this mentality. So, the Christians, church is a weekly thing. They go to church on Sunday or holidays, and that's it. That's their relationship a lot of times with their religious institution. And even with that, though, they still kick up. They got those ties, and they still kick up heavy. I remember we had our security company, and I was dealing with Abyssinian Development Corp in New York. And so one of the brothers who worked with Reverend Calvin Butt's church had told us, he said, he was on one of the committees and we were talking, and he was like, man, we collect on average $100,000 a week in tithes alone. That's not including other stuff we got going on. So even still with that, they still anteed up in terms of finances. With the messages, though, I think a lot of us as Muslims, we're taking on that mentality where it's Jummah, it's the Eid, and that's it. Some masajids that you have, if people are populated, you live around there, you will see brothers come in for some of the prayers. You know, if I'm in East Orange or Newark or some places like that, I may catch a masjid with 1 or 2 rows in terms of brothers coming in for the salat. But for the most part, it's not like that. We don't look at the masjid as being the center of our lives. And I know me personally, I'm guilty of this a lot myself also. You get hustling, bustling, busy throughout the week, and you may only see the masjid on Jumu'ah if there's an event or something taking place. We don't see it as an integral part of our lives in terms of just pulling up if you're a member of a masjid and checking on it, making sure all the doors is locked as the men, making sure the windows are secure. This is some strange times we live in. Just a man doing the manly thing, just pulling up on a masjid and checking on it. We just don't see it as part of our lives. So in different services, I think a lot of masajids, right? I know we used to have this back in the Bronx and Tuckawa Jihad and Woody Crest. We used to have different committees, and I had mentioned that before. And when you have a lot of these different committees, you kind of give people, for lack of a better term, a dog in the race, right? So you give people active because, you know, some people think if they don't have knowledge, right? We keep pumping this student of knowledge thing and the scholars, and which is good. But what happens is that if a person that may not be his thing, he may not be a studious person. That person think that they don't have a connection or they can't really contribute to the masjid. So, you know, we had these committees, like we would have a sick committee, and the sick committee would be responsible for knowing who was in sick, all in the masjid, the elders and things of that nature who needed stuff. And they would go visit them in the hospital. They would take them things to their houses if they were homesick that was collected. They would come to the administration, like, yo, sister Glenda is home. You know, she's an elder. She's sick. We want to take a care package to her. The sick committee would do this, and you have brothers and sisters who were part of this sick committee, and that was their thing. They made sure that they fulfilled the right of the Muslims that was sick, that was part of the masjid. You had the security. The brothers there, that was their thing. They met weekly. They were responsible for protecting the integrity, the security of the masjid. Back then, security, you know, you talking about the 90s, security carried a lot of time. Some brothers that was on those security committees end up doing some bids, you know, on that. But we have evolved and civilized a lot since then. But those security committees are important because even still, it's some nuts and there's some sickos out there. So that was like a rite of passage coming up. That if you was a younger brother in the community, you stood on post. That was just like a rites of passage. You stood on post. You was down there for whatever function we had. But that was a camaraderie that you had amongst people, a cultural aspect. Now it's different now, but you still need to have it because the cultural thing is you're trying to figure out what type of things to bring Muslims around that may not just automatically include a class, a lecture. So whether or not it's a brother's breakfast, it's a sister's brunch, it's a basketball game for the men, it's a self-defense class, it's something that you have to bring people together to just enjoy a family night at the masjid. Is something that you have to bring people together. So you had a group of people that was responsible for those cultural activities to bring the people together for camaraderie, just for the Muslims to come together and enjoy each other's time. So you had a committee that was their responsibility to put all that together, and they also handled the Eids, but whatever activity that we were taking place for the Eid, because a lot of times we come around last minute, but these people planned ahead of time. They had a budget. They came to the masjid administration 3 to 6 months ahead of time. And so the administration knew we need to get these bouncing sets for kids. We need these, this, that, and the third. We were giving out toys. This was the food budget. This was the drink budget. We needed to rent these tables. So the cultural committee, that's what they did, but not just for the Eid. They did it all year long to do these different activities. So you would have that. Then you had the educational committee. They was the ones that's responsible for putting on any educational event. So we're big on that. If we're having a conference that was coming up, if we were doing something with scholars, if you're doing those type of things at that time, we were flying different imams in from all over the country that were students of Imam Muhammad. So we would fly them in. That was the educational committee. They would put all of those things together. So now you had the educational committee. Then you would have the prison release. This is Muslims. We know there's a lot of brothers that come home from prison, and we wanted to welcome them so that they could come in and be an asset and contribute and not go back to prison. So we had those different committees, whether or not it was deter or whatever the prison release committee, those brothers, they took it serious. They was responsible for that. So if a brother came home and he came home from prison, the brother automatically knew, oh, listen, go see Brother John Muhammad over there, that he handles you brothers that's just coming home. So when he came home, the brother would connect with him. He would get his phone number. He would stay in touch with him. He would invite him to the prison release meetings that was so on and so coming home. That was another committee. So what I'm saying, all of these different committees, it gave people a hand in the movement and the activity of the masjid. You had these people, you signed them up. When you came in the billboard, it would have a list of committees. If you wanted to join in, you could sign your name. It had the person you could reach up to. Then I'm speaking pre-email, pre-cell phones. Everybody was still rocking on house phones back then, and so on and so forth. So now it's easier for you to even reach out to people. Text, social media, all of these things. It's easier. Back then, it was just flyers and home phone numbers. But these committees gave everybody sweat in the game, right? It gave everybody sweat in the game. It put everybody involved, because if a person feels, right, that they can't speak Arabic, right, they don't know, or they haven't memorized this or memorized that, they feel incompetent, right? And sometimes when we speak so heavy at people, sometimes people become intimidated with knowledge, right? They become intimidated, so they feel like, yo, I really ain't got nothing, because, I don't know nothing. I'm not a student. I'm not sharp. I don't know the scholars. I don't know none of that right there. I'm bad. I got Ikhlas, Falak, and Nas under my belt. What can I contribute? We got 8 committees right here, bro. Sis, you can contribute to something. You want to be on a sick committee, you want to be on a cultural committee, you want to be on a security committee, then you had the finance committee. These were the group of businessmen that were at the masjid, and their entire job was to come up with different ways to earn money and to make sure the masjid bills were paid or whatever it was. These were the people that were business people. They were qualified. They may have been an accountant or insurance salesman. One brother had a store, whatever it was. They were part of the business committee. So everybody had something that was there to contribute. And what happens when you do that, you start putting people understanding that the masjid is the center of our lives. That's how we're going to save ourselves. That's how we're going to save our families from this fitna that exists out there, and to preserve the integrity of the dawah, right? You have all of this stuff and you bring people around, and then, you do all of that. And in closing, education is the key point. Right? We know education is an extremely, extremely important factor in Islam. And I can't stress the importance of classes and bringing people into the masajid that are qualified to teach us, the layman person. And like Ismail said, Arabic is extremely important. I think it's paramount. It's one of the most important things, because like you say, at the end of the day, you'll get up from a class and then the salah to come, and you can't even connect half the time to the person that's in the salah, because you don't have a clue of what he's saying. And that's a reality. You understand what I'm saying? I don't care how we want to dice it, but that's just a reality. A brother gets up there and he's reciting from Surah Al-Mulk or something like that. It's a reality. He can't, and you sitting in the back in your hand and you're trying to focus, And the next thing you know, you like, man, I wonder did I pay my light bill this month? Oh man, did I do you off into the galaxy somewhere, and until he says Allahu Akbar, I'm going to the next position. That's just the reality of what exists amongst us. So that Arabic is extremely important. However, to get the people in there to want to do the heavy lifting with Arabic, we have to do all of these other things. And I think that's one thing you want to do for the committees. And like Najeeb said, I just want to add something what you were saying when you were talking about the MGT and the junior FY in the classes, because like you said, some of the sisters are not qualified to marry. And I totally agree with you. Just like a lot of the brothers are not qualified to marry. They just don't know manly qualities. A guy don't know, these guys don't know nothing about how to maintain a household, how to pay bills on time, how to change a flat tire, how to make sure their wives feel secure, and vice versa. A lot of the women are not raised on how to maintain a household, how to preserve a household, how to keep things in line. But we have to create these different committees and these environments. And if you want to create a family committee or things of that nature, to create rites of passage so that people don't go online and find someone up there calling themselves a halal sexpert, and that's who they start taking their dawah from, their invitations from, because we have to preserve our community from these deviants. And I'm using a nice word right now, who come up under there and espouse all of this filth and foolishness up under the banner of Islam. But if our people don't have a venue or an outlet, it's easy for these vultures who come up out there saying that they're Muslim and promoting filth. Where you have a Muslim woman holding a plastic sex organ in her hand, standing out there talking about, yeah, I'm teaching people, your daughters, on what to do with their body, with their husband. And her husband is there. And now that you got Muslims out there co-signing this shenanigans. So we have enemies that we have to preserve our community from, because we are shepherds. We are shepherds. And I call them people wolves. You understand? I call them wolves. And that's the reality of it, man. So in order to preserve that, we have to have all of these things so that our people don't get out there and get caught with these bozos that's pretending to be Muslims because they put a letter in front of their name, doctor. You understand? And they put these things in front of their name, and they out there attracting young Muslim women minds with this nonsense, with this filth. You understand? And the only way we're going to do that and preserve that. And I'm sorry if I'm animated on that subject, because that joint grinds my gears when I see stuff like that. But these are the other things that's important. So may Allah preserve us and protect us from this nonsense and continue to move in this direction, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
I want to comment real quick on something that he mentioned. I'm assuming we have another caller. I just want to make a quick comment.
Yeah, but he has to sync though, so you can get your comment in, inshallah.
Okay. First I want to thank Big Bro Khalil, Hafizakallah wa Jazakallahu khairah, for your input as usual. Very well received and well needed and very much appreciated. Barakallahu feek. I want to piggyback on something that he said. For years, right, since I probably was a teenager, I've been in meetings with some of the imams and, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed to, take a liking to me, people that I looked up to, like Imam Hamza in Patterson, New Jersey. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him and reward him for all he's done to aid the community there, and the like. People who would take me places, people who I looked up to, role models, take me places. And I really was a lot of times probably too young to even be in those environments, but they would take me in there, and alhamdulillah, I benefited at least from just getting from the exposure, right? Amongst other things. And one of the things that I realized, and I'm sure you brothers can agree, because we've both been either Muslim our lives or from very young age, or three of us, alhamdulillah, our entire lives or from young ages, alhamdulillah, and have similar experiences with leadership and with being in meetings and places like that. One thing, subhanAllah, that I realized is that, you know, we're not really like Najeeb said, we're not short on suggestions, right? But it's the implementation of those suggestions and those ideas that we tend to fall short on, or as it relates to. And I think personally that even when you have communities where people are ambitious, or you have a certain amount of people that are ambitious, or you have a board leadership that are ambitious, that they themselves may be the people who are coming up with these tremendous ideas. What Khalil said about the masjid not being acknowledged as a center of our community, I think that in one thing I can say, right, that I find to be consistent in pretty much all of the communities that lack in this area, is that when the masjid is not established in the hearts and minds and the lifestyles of the people as the center of their civilization, it's very difficult for these ideas to come into fruition. Because I've been in Masaajid that people from the outside may consider to be productive. But when you look at the overall mentality, or what appears to be the overall mentality of the constituency and the people, the members of that community, you don't really, it doesn't look like their mentality is one that would reflect a people who consider the masjid as the center of their civilization and their existence. And so when we have when there are programs that may be put in place to cater to the people, they don't even understand or notice the significance, right, of those programs. So we'll have classes that they need, you know, elementary classes, things that every Muslim has to know, and they themselves are not going to participate. We'll have, you know, the masjid open for the salawat. And again, I'm not, and Sadiq Barakallahu Fiqh, you know, you're my slightly bigger brother. I'm not being pessimistic. Okay, I'm just mentioning the sad reality. And
you just stating facts.
Yeah, stating facts and trying to figure out how we can rectify this. Right, some of the people, they don't understand that. Okay, this masjid is open Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, and Isha, with no restrictions for those who want to come pray in it, and people are not taking advantage. And now when we look at the reason why I believe a substantial of people may not be taking advantage, one of the main reasons goes back to what we discussed last week and the weeks prior, and even earlier on in this particular program. One of the reasons, because the people's lifestyles, number one, they don't live near the masjid. So going to the masjid becomes an actual project. You got to get out, you got to time it right, you got to drive a certain distance just to get there for one salat. Now you get home, the hustle and bustle of your regular week, it's not always easy for a person to get there. And that, when you look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and those ideas and those things that came to fruition, from war to other aspects of community life, those things started, right? They formulated around the people being in the masjid praying 5 times a day. So even if we come up, I've seen many communities where they have all of these ideas, and sometimes they even try to implement them. But because the people are so disconnected from the day-to-day interactions and inner workings of the masjid, a lot of these things pass by them, and they can't really get off the ground. I remember one time we were in New York and we were trying to establish, a full-time Quran school, and we were going to add other academics and so on and so forth. And it didn't really get past the first 2 months because the people were disconnected. A lot of people weren't even there to realize or acknowledge that, this was going on. You know what I mean? When you have a masjid that's, near in a busy area where a lot of tujjar or ummal, they come and they work and they pass by, so they come inside the masjid to pray and they leave out. It appears from the outside, wow, and this is the case a lot of times in New York, places like Newark, even certain places in Philadelphia, where it's busy, people will come through, and you may, at the time, you may see 50% of the congregation may be people that you don't see on a day-to-day basis, because the masjid is in a convenient location and people come, they stop to pray, and they keep on moving, right? But that's not what we would consider to be the community and the people who want to build and maintain that masjid. So from the outside, it looks like they're doing so much because they have a nice group of people come up. That's not our goal. We welcome those brothers, but we need a core group of people, like 15 brothers, where to say, okay, we're gonna move to this area and we're gonna commit. We're gonna commit. Our goal is to make the masjid the center of our lifestyle and our civilization. When these ideas come to fruition, now we form committees. Now when we have tasks, when we want to have food pantries and other things, and of course there are short-term goals and simple things that we can do without this kind of effort, without us having this as a prerequisite. There are many things that we can do, but I think that one of the biggest problems that we have, once we go any step beyond the very basic establishment of the masjid, Salat al-Jum'ah, Salat al-Eid, maybe Salat al-Isha, maybe one class a week, maybe a food pantry, basic, beautiful, elementary things that we can implement, which is really not difficult. These things are really, in all actuality, not difficult to establish. When we start talking about going to that next level, we can really start to repair, just on a basic level, our children. We can, on a basic level, trying to save and protect and preserve these marriages that we just, for some reason, people cannot stay married. I mean, it's ridiculous. People get divorced after 15 years of marriage. 15 years and split their family, 10 kids, and the woman now got to split. All kinds of crazy things take place, right? We can't even, if we want to go one step above just that real basic thing, those basic things, just one step above that, where we would now be able to cater to these families that need the kind of inayah and care and consideration necessary in order to maintain their marriages and so on and so forth. Just to get to that point, we will find that one of the most essential things that have to be in place is we have to have the salawat established, which means we have to be close to the masjid, and there has to be a group of brothers and sisters, families that are on the exact same page. Once we can get a small group, maybe 15 people, and again, this may be jumping the gun a little bit because it seems like the theme is more to talk about or is more revolved around us, coming up with things that we can do right now. And again, I believe there are many things that we can do right now. And I believe you brothers mentioned a lot of them already. But I'm looking more, at our ultimate salvation, because those basic things will help us a lot. But in my opinion, when we look at where we are right now as a people, and where, how the state of our marriages, the state of many of us, when it comes to our children, this is a very serious issue. It's not something that we have time to defer or to delay or to, saving our children can't be a long-term goal. Saving our marriages can't be a long-term goal. And one of the most elementary things, my kids in there banging sound like to me. One of the most elementary things that have to be in place is that salat got to be established. And those people have to be, around that masjid. You know what I mean? They have to be. So I think we need to come up with practical solutions, whether it's trying to come up with a small group of brothers, and we are really committed to moving around that community. Because when people come and see that, and they can be a part of it, and they see the development just of a small group, 15 people with consistency, that will attract other people, other minds, other energy. And now we can formulate these committees and do these other basic things that will make us reach greatness. I honestly believe that, these ideas, as great as they are, and again, I'm being as optimistic as I can be, but within that optimism is me being real and saying, okay, for years, I've been in different meetings, I've overheard conversations. Imam Hamza took me to many different places, and I would hear the stuff they were discussing when I'm 18, 19, 20 years old. And then it would be like, a minimal effort. They would make some kind of progress, but would never get anywhere near right their goals and their aspirations. And one of the reasons, because a lot of us are disconnected and separated, not only from each other, but from the masjid itself. And that has to be what the essential element if we want to attain any of these things beyond the basic, simple, beautiful things that we mentioned within this meeting. No.
Indeed.
Umar, are you with us?
Wa alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi
wa barakatuh.
So, أهلا وسهلا.
كيف الحال؟
Inshallah.
الحمد لله. Alhamdulillah. كيف حالكم حبيبي?
Alhamdulillah,
How's everything?
alhamdulillah. So one of the things that, of course, we've been talking about is how the Masajid can take care of themselves and benefit the community. As we know, overseas in the Muslim countries, who takes care of the Masajid? The government. How can we replicate that on a smaller level in our society? That wasn't a rhetorical question. That's a question for you guys. How can we replicate that on a smaller level within our society? It's something that we talked about for years.
That's a good question.
You remember Jamil Al-Amin's community in Baltimore? They had Islamic Way. They owned a big apartment building. Almost all the tenants of the apartment building were Muslim. When they moved into that place, they eradicated the drug dealers. They cleaned up the place, and almost all the people in that apartment building were Muslim. But the benefit here is the funds from the apartment building help fund the community. Why is it that we can't find the Masajid owning property? We've been talking about it for years, and it has yet to happen. Most of our Masajid, and when I say our, I'm talking about the people who are indigenous to America. Most of our Masajid are located in socio-economically deprived areas. And in those areas, you'll find many homes that are dilapidated and very cheap to buy. But it has seemed to me over the years that we don't take advantage of those situations, because there's no way in the world that the Masajids in America shouldn't own property, where we don't have to scrounge and beg for money every Friday, scrounge and beg to help somebody with their light bill or whatever the case may be. The Masajid, and this could be done on an individual level or as a communal level amongst those Masajid that cooperate with one another. You could use like a co-op type of a plan where the different Masajid go in on properties. It doesn't matter where the property is located in the sense of collecting the money. You can build the house, sell it, flip it, just like a regular person does, right? Until you get enough properties that suffices the masjid and the community, so where the community can expand and do other things, whether it's having a clinic, having a school, and you're not so solely dependent upon parents who are usually socioeconomically deficient and paying these, to pay teachers and stuff like that to, support the school, for example. So I don't understand how come, and that's, when Najeeb mentioned the, the dues thing, it kind of took me back, because we had the same background being in the nation. And my mom, rahimahullah, she was in the MGT, she was a lieutenant. And I remember one day she visited Germantown Masjid. And when she came out, she said, those sisters really need some teachings. So, even with that, as the brother before me had mentioned, that is something that, we don't have a lot of older women in our communities, who attend the Masajid on a regular basis and who can offer their expertise, so to speak, to aid the younger women in certain areas. But definitely as a financial piece, then you have the aspect of, like here in Philadelphia, and it exists in all the major cities, the members of government, what are they called? Not the mayor, but the
city council,
councilman.
the council members. They're in charge of properties throughout the city, where you can go to them And these properties belong to like I believe a bank or something like that, a real estate bank or something, where they will basically almost give the property away in order to remove blight from the neighborhoods. So this is another means which the professionals who have the ability to go and, for lack of a better term, have the gift of gab to go and communicate with these people, to talk to them about properties that are available near the Masaajid, and how giving it to a 501c3 to remove the blight and benefit the community, how that would be a benefit giving it to the different Masajid. And you wouldn't have to spend a lot of money. But the amount of money that we waste on whatever, the masjids could have had, the Masajid over the years could have numerous properties. But I don't know any masjid in America, and I haven't been to many of them, but within the urban communities that own real estate on a level where they should own real estate. 10 properties, 15 properties. And it's doable. A masjid, if the community came together, if the communities came together and did like a co-op, the masjid, we could have 5 properties before the end of the year, running, collecting rent, and you just continue to use that to reinvest in other properties and expand that. It could be in Florida, in New York, in Maryland, in Philadelphia, where everybody's benefiting. You have, it'll be like a Beitul Mal where the money goes and everybody can see what's going on with the money from the different properties, where some, you have a management company or management companies collecting the rent, and taking care of the maintenance, where you pay them 1%, 2% to take care of that. Of course, we want to rent to our own people first, but if they fail to pay the bills, then they have to be subjected to what everybody else is subjected to. But if a person falls on hard times, you'd rather them be in the hands of the Muslims than in the hands of the kuffar, where we can aid them if we own the property, give them some respite and give them some time to be able to find some money to continue to pay their rent and things like that. But what I'm saying is, it's very realistic, very possible. It could be done this year, but we have to come together and get the paperwork together and decide how we're going to do it, and just do it. Stop talking and just do it. Your thoughts?
I'm gonna tell you, this is just from the standpoint of full disclosure. Alhamdulillah, here, and where we at in our situation here in the Apopka, we have had this idea. And alhamdulillah, the masjid so far has been able to buy one property right next door. And I've spoken to scattered individuals in various different communities throughout the years who've also had a similar idea. I know our brothers up in Masjid Tawheed, I believe in Michigan, right? I believe that's Michigan, right? Or are they on the other side? Whatever the case is, Yani. I know
you mean Detroit, right?
Detroit, yeah, in Detroit. Our brothers up
Yeah,
there.
Masjid Tawheed is Detroit, but it's right. It's technically border, Detroit, right, but it's Dearborn. Right by Dearborn, yeah.
Right. Those brothers there, I mean, years ago, they've done something similar where they've purchased the masjid, and they bought the houses behind it, and the next to it, and they had an idea to buy the whole city block within like a 20-year plan or something like that. So the idea is there, right? And certain communities have been moving toward it. But, and this is the kind of, the question I want to bring out to everybody, because I mean, without any doubt, I don't have all the answers, no way. But I think the discussion is really good just to put it out there so that, we can start getting people to really, put their minds together to see what's going on. But like here, for example, the masjid, like I said, we have the house next door. We bought that and rent it out. So, that brings in some kind of income for the masjid. The masjid even has went to the point where they have a real estate committee that consists of realtors, to acquire certain properties within the area so that we can buy up everything that's available around us. The problem that we're finding here, and the problem that some of the brothers even there and Master Tawheed, had mentioned to me, was a lack of vision on behalf of the community as a whole, where they had these excellent ideas, but the community, they just don't see it, because their thing was, and likewise here in Florida, is that perhaps the masjid can't buy every property, but there may be other members of the community that can jump on some of these deals and buy up some of these houses that are very, close and adjacent to the masjid, so that it's owned by the general community. You know what I mean? But even with that, there's a disconnection. I really don't understand it, because you have certain brothers, and this is not to say anything negative about those brothers. I love those brothers, but you have certain brothers who that's their business, is they buy homes, renovate them, rent them, or sell them. This is what they do. But when it comes to just, and that's not all of them, because I know one of the brothers very close to me, may Allah reward him. He's had his eye on some properties that are right near and close to the masjid. He's been trying, but the vast majority of the people, it seems like they have no enthusiasm when it comes to this. So my question is to everybody, why do you think we have this type of disconnection? With such an awesome and simple, and common sense type of idea. Why is there such a disconnection? The community says they just not buying into it. I really don't understand.
Well,
But let me step in. Let me step in for 1 second, because I wanna address your question, Sadiq, but I also want to address Umar's question too. And one, when looking at places like Philadelphia and Detroit, I think that the opportunities in both those places are very similar and very doable because of the very low cost of property in those areas. I mean, when you're going into a Detroit, you can get a house literally for $1,000. You would probably have to pour between $20,000 and $40,000 in it to get it up to living standards. But if you want to get a house, you could literally get one for $1,000. And you could correct me if I'm wrong, Umar, but there are still areas within Philly where you could probably come up on houses for that dirt cheap as well, correct?
it still exists, but it's running out quickly. Developers are
Snatching them
moving in.
up. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you're not limited. You're not limited. For example, Norristown, PA, is 14 miles outside of Philadelphia. Okay, very cheap, and you don't have to worry about development because it's a socio-economically challenged place, right? So even if it's not in the vicinity of the masjid, you can still benefit from places that are close by. All right, and again, it doesn't have to be all of the weight doesn't have to be put on one masjid. If the masajid came together like a co-op, you could draw lots. This is who we're going to help first. This is going to be second. This is going to be third, so nobody feels left out. But to answer Sadiq's question, the reason people don't want to get involved is because if I feel like it's not going to benefit me specifically, I don't want no part of it. If I got to put money out, we're talking about the human being. If I got to put money out, right, and I don't see a return on that money, why should I pay? That's the human being. And that's what has plagued our communities. That's what plagues the human being, period. So how do you correct that? I don't know. You got to keep.
You have to incentivize them. The only way that you're going to correct something where a person literally feels like, well, I'm not getting anything out of it, I'm just putting out, but nothing's returning, nothing's coming back in, then we have to figure out a way to incentivize them. That's just the bottom line. And so, like when we look at, because I can't really speak for Philly, but I can speak for Detroit because I went to Detroit more than once. The opportunities in Detroit are still plentiful. You have developers coming in there now, but they're still plentiful, the opportunities, to the point that commercial buildings are up for grabs for very low price. We were trying to get a 30,000 square foot building in Detroit. It was literally going for $49,000. 30,000 square feet. That's a lot of footage. We could have done a whole lot of things with that building, from not only the Musalla area, but things that are connected to education, like a library, for instance, some school, some classrooms, and that's for so on. But then we could have did things that were more in tune towards social dealing with social challenges. Like, say, for instance, we could have had daycares there and a woman's gym and a men's gym and things of that nature. It was a huge building. But the point that I'm making is the opportunities like that in a place are plentiful. And so when you have cities like that, and that's not the only city. The Phillies and the Detroits, you also have East St. Louis, Illinois, where those same type of opportunities are plentiful. You also have St. Louis, Missouri, where those opportunities are plentiful. And, there are other places. The thing that the Muslims are going to have to recognize is that we can't keep being in localities and seeing everybody else come up. See a transition from the community where everybody leaves the community and basically leaves it up for grabs, and it's easy to obtain. And then 10 years go by or 20 years go by, we're still on the same level, and a bunch of other people have come in and seized the opportunities that we've been staring at for the last 10 or 20 years.
See,
So,
I think, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you're absolutely right, man. I think that another thing to add on what Umar said, Barakallahu Feek, is aside from people, and that's a tremendous, tremendous point, that people are thinking about, well, what's in it for me? If I don't see a direct benefit for me, then I'm not really that interested. And I think that the reason why many of the Muslims are like that is because the mentality, when we look at our whole demographic and the entire body of Muslims here in the West, people have such different priorities and different mentalities that it's hard for us to move with the same energy and have the same, priorities and same focus. For example, a lot of the people that migrate to the United States, Muslims that come from all the countries, I don't make a difference what country, what Muslim country he comes from. One thing that's consistent, and I'm not saying every individual, but in every group or every nationality, one thing that I seen to be consistent in them is they just got making money and their kids getting education on their mind. They're thinking about making money, because we're talking about the Muslims at large, right? Because we can break it up into categories, but when we're going to start with the Muslims at large. Muslims at large are not on the same page in America. So the people that come to the United States, they have a different plan. Some of them are coming back. Some of them are coming as refugees. They're coming, fleeing from wherever it is they were. Whether they're running from poverty, they're running from war, or whatever the case is. So when they get here, they're not even thinking. I've had conversations with brothers. Many of them are not even thinking about their Islamic situation when they get here. They're just trying to come here, get in where they fit in, find a job, assimilate, and go ahead and make it financially. And if they can get a nice place to live for themselves, whether it's Muslims there or Kuffar there, if they happen to live by Muslims, alhamdulillah, it's great. I didn't even expect anything like this when I came to the West. But if not, it's no problem. I can go ahead and assimilate into society as long as my kids can go into that school, learn English, get a degree, become a doctor, become an engineer or a scientist, whatever they're going to become. I'm going to go work, my soul out of my body from sun up to sun up as much as I can to make sure that I make enough money to take care of my family. Sometimes the women go to work, not in every case. Okay, a lot of the cultures, the women don't work. Brothers overseas are still maintaining that keep their wife home thing. But some of the brothers are coming here, and I don't want to start getting into nationalities, but some of the brothers, they're coming, they put their wife going to work. Everybody is all the way in. And there's a select few of them that are actually saying, hey, listen, we need to have an Islamic community where we need to build this and we need to live around each other. No, most of the ones that I know that I've spoken to, that's not really a priority. And if it is a priority, like we discussed previously, they're thinking more about moving around the people from their nationality, not thinking about moving around Muslims so we can establish an Islamic lifestyle. They didn't come here for that. A lot of them, okay, and Allah knows best. So that's for us to, they're not, when we come up with an idea about we need to, things like we need to build an Islamic community and we need to come together and have this coagulated effort, right? This group effort where we're all working together, trying to establish, real estate ventures and do things like that. They're so far from that because their mentality, their mind is really on, as Omar said, what's in it for me. But before they can even get to that point, they're so immersed in their goal, which is to come here and make money, whether it's to make money and chill or make money, build a house overseas and go back. Establishing Islam, the Quran and the Sunnah, right? In this environment, the way a Salafi is thinking, most of them not even thinking about nothing like that. Like Islam to them, you gotta look at when so many Muslims still hear the word Sunnah, and the only interpretation and understanding of the word Sunnah that they hear is something that's not wajib. They're using the way, the fuqaha may use the word, right? They hear the Sunnah, to them it just means something you don't have, that if you don't do, there's no sin on you. So when you look at it, the difference between a person who's thinking like a Salafi, that every single thing he has to do the way a Muslim is supposed to do it, whether it's from the wajibat or it's from the muharramat, you got to stay away from the way a Salafi is supposed to stay away from, or it's from the mubahat, whatever category it falls in, the Salafi is thinking, okay, what's my Islamic position and discourse as it relates to this issue? But a lot of the people, they're not trained like that. Again, they're thinking about making money. Then you have the majority, the most of the people that are learning about Islam and embracing Islam historically in America have been African Americans. This is a statistical reality. African Americans have a whole different kind of thing going on. Why? Because not everybody, but a significant amount of us struggle from weird things like inferiority complexes, whether brothers want to be in denial or not. Something like buying a house, like I still know brothers that if you just do something, a basic thing for them would be the biggest deal in the world. You understand what I'm trying to say? Like really something really basic would be a huge deal with some of the brothers. You know what I mean? Something that we would just consider a normal everyday task would be the biggest. Some people, something like, getting a new car is still a big deal. And I'm not saying that that's a sign of success or anything like that, but the concept, getting a new car, the idea of actually getting a new car or getting a home for your family, or your wife not going to work, or having 2 wives or 3 wives, all of these things are like fantasy fairy tales to some of the people. Again, I'm not saying all, but a significant amount of the brothers, they don't even look at things like, they don't even know the first thing about, forget about knowing the first thing, the concept of a few brothers coming together and buying property. That idea is so far-fetched from some of the people, they can't even aspire towards it. So a man who gets up in the morning, gets a job at, working construction, not as a big contractor, but just as a laborer, he's making $750 a week, $650 a week. He up as far as he's concerned. There's people still got that mentality. So when we start talking about things like buying a property, making all kind of business deals, coming together and building communities, there's a significant amount of people who they can't even think about something like that because their mind, they can't even think that far. So when you're trying to get people from so many that have so many different backgrounds, right, and so many different things that Shaitan has used to keep them from aspiring towards greatness, right? When you're trying to deal with a congregation like that, you really have to have a strategic plan, right, to help them develop the mentalities necessary, or the mentality necessary in order to work towards that goal. Because again, we can talk about it as we're talking about it, but in moving forward, we have to take into consideration the different mentality or mentalities that people have, the different levels that they're on, and we got to figure out a way. And goes back to what I originally said. I don't mean to continue to beat the what do you say, beating the dead horse, or however they say. I don't want to be like that. But what I am saying is that it's going, in order for us to do this, there has to be a group of committed brothers to try to get everybody on the same page. That's a long-term goal. Short-term goal has to be, all right, I noticed that on our channel, or I noticed that in our classes, or I noticed that in our, the interaction with the brothers, there's a group of people that are consistently saying the same things, giving me the indication that we're all on the same page. So we need to be serious, going to it completely and totally selfless. Because now we're talking about, back to what Omar said, what's in it for me. So if I'm coming and I got $20,000, and another brother got $15,000, another brother got $40,000, another brother got $5,000, but we all got the same passion. Now we trust each other enough to believe that we all have the same goal. It doesn't really make a difference how much money I put in at this point. I'm thinking about how everybody is going to benefit. I'm not coming in there thinking, well, because I put in 50 and you put in 20, I want more than you. No. If there's an opportunity for me to get more, if that's the way it's set up, okay. But if the goal is we need this amount of money to do this thing, or we need this amount of energy to do this thing, you can come one day to sacrifice or donate, or you donate your physical energy and your time, and I can come 3 days, doesn't make a difference as long as the job gets done. The level of selflessness and the level of sacrifice and loving for your brother what you love for yourself, and these kind of things, preferring your brother over your own self, and these kind of things, is high level of brotherhood and sacrifice that the Sahaba used to make. If we can get just a small group of people, 15 brothers, 15 families who legitimately are on the same page, moving in the same direction, has the same goals and aspirations, I think, to me, the stuff we're talking about, I think it can be very, very practical, with that kind of commitment and that kind of consistency. But again, these beautiful ideas, they're tremendous, and they don't seem far-fetched at all. But to answer Sadiq's question, I just think that the people, the amount of people, let's be honest with ourselves. If we were to close our eyes right now and imagine having these kind of conversations with everybody that we know, or everybody in our masjid, or everybody in our community, how many people do we honestly believe would have the same passion, or even close to the same amount of passion, understanding, and motivation to carry out this task that we're talking about? This is a basic thing, and it's something that has to be done for our salvation. Like, the walls are closing in. You know what I mean? You send your kid to public school, you might as well throw any potential any good that you're looking for, anticipate for them, in the garbage. You send your kid to a public school. You understand what I'm trying to say? There's so many things in society right now that we have no choice but to find an alternative. But you'll think that after all of this stuff, even with the pandemic and everybody being home, people being, in the house with their families and getting to know their kids that they probably didn't even get a chance to see for the last couple of years, and their wives that they probably barely spent any time with over the last couple of years, you would think that now the men were able to see the difference in having your family in your environment, being able to cultivate them the way you want to cultivate them, and never want to go back to that lifestyle. But you'll find many of the brothers couldn't wait to get back out in the world and do that same thing. Couldn't wait to throw their kids back out in public school, because the mentalities are so different. You know what I mean? So we have a lot of work to do, and a big task ahead of us. But I think that a practical solution is to be concerned about the larger, greater Muslim community, but prioritize and focus on coming together with a group of brothers that are really on the same page, and everybody basically within themselves, and figuratively speaking, taking an oath within their own selves that, listen, I'm going to be committed to this thing, and I'm going to see it all the way through, inshallah, and I'm not going to be good until me and the other brothers that's with me are good. We all got to be good no matter what. And once that happens, then we'll open up the door for everybody else to the people who never even thought about something as great as that, they can get exposed to it. Now they can get motivated, and other people who are like-minded, that they basically, their ambitions and their aspirations are lying dormant inside of them because they haven't seen a practical solution or a prototype of what it is that they want. Those people will come, and then we can continue to expand on that. You know what I mean? Or expand as a result, or expand based on that. So I think honestly, we these ideas are tremendous, but we have to really, really just come together with the brothers who think like us and move forward, man. Inshallah.
I want to emphasize, just going back to Umar's question. I want to emphasize that for the thinkers amongst us, we're going to have to incentivize the people that may have that attitude. And people a lot of times don't reflect off this, but this is from the prophetic methodology. Like if we look at, for instance, the zakat and who the zakat is paid to, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala clearly states, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا وَالْمُؤَلَّفَاتِ قُلُوبُهُم, to the end of the verse. That the sadaqah, and the sadaqah was being referred to here is the zakat. It is only given to the extremely impoverished, then the working class poor. But then what's stated after that? Al-amilina alayha. That's the one that goes out to collect the zakat. Even the one that goes out to collect the zakat has a right to it. So in a sense, this is a way, this is incentivizing the person to go out and do that work. When we go to the next group that's mentioned, those whose hearts are inclined. And this category of people can even be the kuffar receiving the zakat. So there's an incentive for them to enter into Islam. So we have to first look at the prophetic methodology of how things got accomplished, and then try to incorporate that within whatever it is that we're trying to do as well today. And so I would say that the intellectuals amongst us, we're going to have to figure out a way to a degree to incentivize the people that may think like that, because their help is still needed for the overall situation.
I don't want you to forget that there's opportunity out there for free money, as the Masaajid, if they're nonprofits, there's opportunities for free money. You can get $50,000 to use it to better the community, whether that's renovating a home for the less fortunate, which may be, for lack of better terms, not parishioner, but I told Sadiq about that one. But about the worshipers who go to the masjid, if they, of low income. And, we have to get out of this mindset that Salafiyah means miskeen. Like, if you Salafi, you're supposed to be broke. You're not supposed to have no money. The Sahaba, they made money. Some of them were very wealthy, and they spent their money towards the betterment of Islam. So we have to get out of this mindset that, I don't want to work for the kuffar, so I'm gonna sell incense and oils. And I'm not saying that in a derogatory manner, but to say this is the level which I'm striving for, and that's all I want to do. We have to get out of that mindset.
It also has to be a level of ta'awun too, because I'll give you an example. I was in Philly one time. I think I was in Philly one time for Jumu'ah. I'm not sure. I can't recall if I gave the khutbah or not at that time, but I was at Ahl Hadith. And afterwards, I rode with one of the brothers. He was driving me around, right? And he mentioned that he bought a house based off a program that Obama had put in place. for first-time home owners, and they basically, I don't. He basically said that they paid for the majority of the house. Basically, the government did, and so I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "So you told the brothers back at Al Hadith about that?" And he was like, "Oh no, it was well known." And so I said to myself, "Okay, in other words, he didn't tell anybody." But everybody in Ahl Hadith should have had a house. That was a first time homeowner going out to get a home.
I would check out the small print on that one.
Yeah. Well, I'm just telling you what was told to me. The main point that I'm taking out the bar here what was said. The
Right.
main point that I'm making is that we have to be more of seeing opportunities and
Anyone.
conveying it to the larger community.
Right.
Because had I known
Right.
about something like that, and if it's based off what was basically told to me, everybody in the masjid who didn't own a home would own a home. I don't let that be. I'd have came back as soon as I got mine. I'd have came back the next day. Listen, this is how you can get a home right here.
Yeah.
And then it would have been good if a plan would have been put into place where, okay, brothers, you could do whatever you want to do, but we would suggest that, you get it within the radius of the masjid. So we can all be able to just walk to the salawat.
Yeah.
Now, my other question is, sometimes we're a reflection of our environment. And what I mean by that is, why, this is a question I have, and I discussed this with Sheikh Dawood years ago, but why is it that we always have to have our masajid in the hood?
I believe that's
I think it's what we mentioned or something that we mentioned last week. It's because a lot of times we look at it from a more opportunistic standpoint, and there is no real planning involved. So we kind of get what is cheap.
No, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case.
And
I think
and really that's about it. No, go ahead.
it seemed like you're breaking up. Was everybody hearing him clearly, or it seemed
Yeah,
like
he was chopped. It was choppy.
Yeah, I think what the situation is that people establish masajid where they're at. That's where they're at in the hood, and that's where they establish them. I think it's just as simple as that. For brothers, if brothers don't live in the suburbs, you're not going to live in the hood somewhere and then go establish a masjid way out in the suburbs, and everybody that's accepting Islam is right around you, right there on the same block and things of that nature. I think it's just a matter of circumstance. So it's for the same reason why foreigners or immigrants that live further out establish masjids where they're at. I think it's just as simple as that, and Allah knows best.
I didn't want to get into the psychology of it, but
I would agree. No, I'm saying I would agree in certain circumstances, but I know of situations where the motivating factor was just due to cost, because it's cheap in the hood. So they brought the masjid to the hood, and they put it in a place where none of the administrators, not the imam, no, the administrators, no, most of the people that frequent the masjid, none of them lived in that area. They just got it there because it was cheap, and that was the only real concern that they had. And that lack of planning, I believe, is of extreme detriment to the overall establishment of communities, because again, we set ourselves up for loss when we don't live in close proximity to the masjid. We set ourselves up for loss when the masjid is in areas that we don't want to live in and we're trying to get away from. You know what I mean? We set ourselves up for loss constantly. One of the biggest, I think, incentives we should have to come together or to establish these things, I should say, is the statement of the Prophet ﷺ that when the child of Adam dies, his deeds are cut off except from three. And what the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, sadaqah jariyah, that sadaqah that is consistent, sadaqah jariyah. Now, if we help to establish these communities, that's a sadaqah jariyah. Now, that's going to continue. Now, or knowledge that is benefited from. This is an encouragement for those to go and learn their religion, to establish it, and to share what they have. But as the Prophet said, teach from me, even if it's one verse, right? This is an incentive. Also, the Prophet said, or a righteous child that makes dua for him. Now, a righteous child is what would you say? It is more possible that you will have a righteous child when they're raised in the likes of these communities that we're speaking about, and that Islamic village that we're speaking about, especially given the environment that we live in. So you want to give your children really a fighting chance to hold on to their religion, so that we have some kind of Islamic sustainability within our progenies, right? All of these things, this is the main incentive. But if people are so disconnected that they're not looking to what will benefit their akhirah and will benefit the akhirah of their children, their children's children, then within that is a big problem. But and to piggyback off of something that Ismail had mentioned, we understand the situation is what it is. Then everyone is not going to see it, but we have to have some degree of sacrifice for those individuals, those like-minded individuals, those visionaries who see this and who understand its importance, who you don't have to sell the idea to because they already understand and see the value in the idea itself. Then they have to sacrifice and come together and group in different areas. Now, everyone is not going to move to the same area, but like-minded individuals need to start gathering in certain pockets of the states, because the reality of it is that we need the likes of these communities wherever Muslims are. So whatever state, whatever city, we need these things. So wherever Muslims are, we need this. So like-minded individuals have to sacrifice and come together and start forming some of these communities that we're speaking of.
Nah,
And that's something that we can do immediately.
nah. I think just to comment on what first of all, Sadiq Barakallahu Fiq, for that, what you just mentioned, I agree 1,000%. And what our brother Omar, and just in response to giving I would like to give my response to this question, why the Masaajid are a lot of times in the hood. Both answers that I heard from Najeeb and from Sadiq, both of them, I agree with those, because I think that in certain circumstances, it's motivated due to, financial circumstances or financial strategy, you know what I mean? And some circumstances are definitely because some people don't really think outside of the hood. People are accepting Islam in the hood. That's where they live. That's where they congregate, and that's where their community lives. And they're like, well, we might as well just stay here. That's what they know. It's like when somebody, wants to move and they say, I'm moving out of this neighborhood. I don't like this house no more. They go find another neighborhood within that same district to move into. They don't say I'm moving way out to another county. On average, a lot of people, eventually they catch on. Sometimes people do, but a lot of people move from one side of the ghetto on this street on 12th and whatever to 14th and whatever to 18th and whatever, and they kind of bounce around within that same, a geographical location, because that's what they know, that's what they're comfortable with, that's what their family is. And I think the masjid winds up becoming a product of that rotation. But in addition to that, I believe that part of it goes back to what we mentioned earlier, and that is that the people who are spearheading these movements, they're not educated enough. And I'm not trying to insult the brothers, because we love the brothers, and many of these brothers, alhamdulillah, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed them to establish, we would not probably be the men that we are today, right? Alhamdulillah, if those brothers who didn't have a lot of Islamic education didn't go ahead and make sacrifices and buy these buildings and convert them and just have a place for the Muslims to be. So I'm not taking anything from our elders who may have not been as Islamically educated as, people may have liked for them to be. and I'm not taking anything from any community leaders or administrative personnel who have been making decisions throughout the years that we've all been benefiting from. I'm just stating a fact and what I believe to be reality. And that is that when it comes to the overall mission and the understanding of what is going to make a community great, that is something that requires education. So, you can be a beautiful person with beautiful intentions. Al-ilmu qabla al-qawli wal-amal. That's just how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set it up. So knowledge precedes statement and action. So if a person doesn't understand fully exactly what it needs to what a community actually needs and where it should be, you look at the first house that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established upon taqwa, right? Al-Kaaba. Who was it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to establish that? It was Ibrahim alayhi salatu salam, and Allah accompanied him with his son. فَنَبِيٌّ نَبِيٌّ أَبُو نَبِيٍّ. As a prophet was the father of a prophet alayhi salatu salam. So at the end of the day, and then we look at the Masjid al-Nabawi, who was it that established that? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? We look at all the Masajid, Masjid al-Aqsa, all of these Masajid, that we have that have made such tremendous contributions throughout history. When you look at the people, the mu'assisun and the people who established them, alhamdulillah, they were people who were either prophets or people of knowledge. All these places of worship. So at the end of the day, it's from the sunnah of the salihin that the people who are qualified, right, to build communities and to build masajid and to establish communities are the ones who build the masajid and establish masajid and establish the communities. So when did it become a thing now that people who really don't understand, with all the beautiful intentions, right? Because we understand, people, you got to do what you have to do. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. You fear Allah to the best of your ability. So you may not have all the pieces, but we need a place to pray. So we can't wait for, this alim to come, or this talib ilm to come, or this group of, du'at to come and do everything. We're in the community. We sitting here. It's a bunch of Muslims walking around. We've accepted Islam. We need to establish a place to pray. Somebody has to put it together, and somebody got to lead the salah, and we have to take it as far as we can take it. Beautiful. May Allah reward everybody involved. But just to answer the question, I believe that a lot of times when these organizations are being formed and the masjid's goals and the masajid, their agendas and their aspirations are being, set, and they're working towards bringing those ideas and those agendas and those thoughts into fruition. A lot of times the people involved are not educated enough to understand all the things that's going to make us great. So if they were educated enough, then they would know that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he strategically, based off the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, chose locations for masajid, chose places for his companions to migrate. He sent them to Habasha because he actually believed at that time that would be a good environment for them. He didn't just send them anywhere. He sent them somewhere where he thought would be, Islam would be able to grow, and there would be a level of safety, right? And they would be able to establish a community. And he was right. To a certain degree, he was right. He didn't make a mistake by sending them there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed that something else was going to happen, at the the end of that first hijrah. But nonetheless, the Prophet didn't make a mistake. That was based off guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it was a wonderful choice, and tremendous amount of good came out of it. And then when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided them to go to Al-Medina and establish, the second hijrah, they migrated there, and look at what it became, what became of it today. Because the location, the people there, the demographic, everything that was involved in that process, it was all based off of guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, based off of knowledge. So when people are building communities and trying to make a decision where we should put the community, where should it not be, what are the kind of amenities and the resources we need to be in that community, it needs to be a group of people that understand enough about Islam and understand enough about the kind of decisions that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made, so we can now formulate and base our decisions off of the way he made his decisions, and then we won't make mistakes. So the hood may or may not be the best place for people. You have some place where hood, maybe it's the hood because, it's just a community that's decaying, but not a lot of gang activity, not a lot of murders, not a lot of drugs, not, maybe some people in there getting high, but not too crazy. Or maybe some people in there, they might be some guys that fight a little bit, but no gunplay, nobody really getting killed, not a lot of gang affiliation. The biggest problem is the poverty. And we now have the budget to buy up that entire area. So we go buy up that area. But then there's another place where there's gangs everywhere. And it's another place where, the Muslim children have been known to go in that area and get infected by whatever nonsense they have in that community. So we're not going to go there. So now that suburban community may be good, but that suburban community may be full of people who hate Islam. There may be a bunch of people over there who've protested against Islam and fought against Islam historically. That may not be a safe place, obviously, for us to go and take our children and have our wives walking back and forth. So we need to understand enough about Islam, enough about the kind of decisions that the Prophet ﷺ made and how he made them and when he made them, so that we can now make our decisions based off of that. And I think a lot of times the brothers who are leading these movements and these organizations, they don't understand those things. They understand one or two things. We need a building. We need to have something. This is cheap, or this is what the people are used to, or this is close to where the people are. So let's move there. And you got the other brothers. To just add on to something, a question that I didn't ask, but I would ask myself rhetorically now: why do some people put Masaajid in very affluent communities, so affluent it's above the financial capabilities of the constituency? Because they're not thinking about a community. They're just thinking about having a big masjid with a bunch of chandeliers, how beautiful it's going to be on Ramadan, and how many events they can have there. And they're not thinking about the everyday Muslim, so they'll go there. So you need people who understand Islam enough and know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, and know that people understand their Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam enough to know, based off of the way he made decisions and his companions radiallahu anhum made decisions and how they built their communities and established their communities throughout the Muslim world. He can now, or that group of brothers can now, make a decision and try to get as close to the kind of decision that the Salaf would make as possible. So I think that plays a big role in it. People, be in a position who we appreciate and we love, but they just lack the academics and the knowledge and the know-how and the wisdom when it comes to, establishing these communities and choosing locations and so on and so forth. Now,
we're gonna close out now.
Those are good points.
We were supposed to. We are planning on talking till 9:30. Man, I've been up since 2:50 in the morning, so we're gonna close this out, inshallah. We got a little bit off topic because we were dealing with what programs masajids can start for the level that they're on right now. But I'll throw this out there when we're talking about manhood classes and things of this nature. For Masajid, they can tap into the community's talent and possibly have the businessmen within the community that specialize in certain things give classes to the younger brothers on how to do that work. And that way you're raising up people, because I remember how high school used to be when my father was in high school. You could actually go to high school in America and learn how to repair cars. You could actually go to high school and graduate with a life skill and know how to make money in comparison to today. So perhaps that's one thing that the Masajid could do, is look at people who know business, wherever they specialize in, and try to incorporate them in giving classes to the younger brothers. So by the time these young brothers hit 18, they may have a business plan already because they've been sitting in classes on the subject at the Masajid for X amount of years. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best. I'm not gonna carry the feed any longer. Let's hope that the brothers and sisters benefited from this discussion. Of course, we usually go 2 hours, 30 minutes, sometimes 3 hours. And I know it seems like the conversation is just getting good. That's because we can have conversations like this all day, because they're badly needed. But it's just hope that these conversations will be the spark in some people to get certain things accomplished. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best. I'd like to thank my guest panelists, my regular panelists, and the guests that come in to give their commentary and to add to the discussions. Barakallahu fikum. And with that, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.